All right, we're in the home stretch. This is chapter 15, and I think you'll find this slideshow useful as you continue to work on writing your research reports. One more week to go after this one. So hopefully at this point you have obviously constructed your study, decided how to do your sampling, conducted your study, and now you face the task of writing up the information that you found. And so the first process is things that you've already covered, right? So what is the background material that you have? You have already made your statement of the problem. If you've identified a hypothesis, you should have that written down clearly, what you anticipate or think that the outcomes might be in your research study. Or maybe you don't have a hypothesis, in which case obviously you don't include that. And you have your research questions. So those elements that you have done. You also have the design of your study. So you have the beginning portions of your research paper written, at least the first half to 2/3. So that's the good news. One thing to keep in mind as you write up the paper, when you wrote the research design proposal, that was in future tense. Now we are talking about a study that's already happened. So one of the things you'll need to do in your paper is go back and convert that to past tense. So if you said, I will interview 12 people, you now need to say, I did interview, and maybe you're only able to interview 10. So you say, I did interview 10, and make sure you frame it in that way. So another big component of the writing of the research paper is organizing your findings. And key to that is deciding what you're going to emphasize, looking at the data, what stands out to you, what happened that you might have expected that was going to happen, what didn't happen that you might have expected that was going to happen, and what stands out for you. Is there any data that's not relevant that you may have collected that you may decide you don't want to include? It's too cumbersome, it's too complicated, it's not relevant to your research questions, so you're going to go ahead and leave that out. And then which data can be included in an appendix? And very often this is your tool. So if you did a survey or a list of questions, you don't want to embed those questions or surveys right in the paper, but you do want to reference them and then include them as an appendix. And you can look at your APA guide to see exactly how to do that. You want to potentially, especially if you have quantitative data, you want to use tables or pie charts. Those are often illustrative in papers and help make sense of what you're describing in words. You can't just include data in a table. You need to describe what the findings are as well, so you can do both. So once you've written in your study the findings, so you've summarized what you found, what the themes were or what the averages were, then you have an opportunity in the discussion section to develop some recommendations. And some of you that I've talked with said this is hard because most of the semester I've been saying it can't be your opinion, it can't be your opinion. But actually the recommendations or the discussion portion of the paper really is about what you make of your findings. So you can insert some cautious opinion. And there's some good advice on this slide. When you do that, you want to obviously show that they're supported by the findings, and then you need to discuss limitations. So for example, if 100% of your study participants said that they agree with the intervention, that's interesting information, but you need to be clear that it's limited by the fact that you only talked with 10 people and those people all reside in the same geographical area. So those might be some of the limitations. Also, when you discuss your findings and what you interpret about your findings, you want to be tentative. So particularly because none of us did randomized controlled trials, we can't conclusively say anything. But you can say that the data may imply this, or one interpretation might be. So being tentative is important. You want to make recommendations that are directly connected and relevant to the overall research question. So make sure that you relate those back in that final discussion. And then if there's another way to view the data that you can see, maybe you have a primary interpretation, but you can also offer a secondary interpretation, another way that data might be understood. A few final things that you can do in your discussion section is you can make suggestions about further research. If you were going to do this project again, if you had some resources to do it a little bit better, what would you do? Or what should other researchers take under consideration if they're looking at the same topic? And again, if there are findings and some of those findings either match up or don't match up with your previous studies from your literature review, this is a great time to either draw those connections or highlight those discrepancies. Okay, and they also talk about thinking about who your audience is. And for the purposes of this paper, your audience is the general social work reader. So people who might be interested in your topic, who want to learn a little bit more about it. And then they offer some of the contents of a traditional report. And I'm not asking that you do these things. You need to go ahead and just follow the outline proposal that I gave you. You don't need to submit an abstract. I don't care if you title it or don't title it, and your background is the literature review you've already conducted. Your purpose is the study methods that you've described, and then your sample population. So follow not this guideline, but the one that was provided to you in more detail in your syllabus and in the announcement page. So again, here's some things that you could think about, including use the headers that I provided, but you want to think about your sampling approach. How did you find and locate your participants? How did you inform them of their rights? Primarily their rights to not participate, or other information about the confidentiality or anonymity of your project. Again, how you collected the data. Did you use a survey? Did you do interviews? Was it online? As much detail as you can offer about your methods. How you analyze the data. That's an important part of your methods. So you want to talk about compiling survey data and averaging numbers, or you want to talk about reading for themes and coding data. And then summary of your findings, what your recommendations might be, or your discussion about possibilities, and then limitations. So those are some things to include. Also your appendix, if you want to include your survey tool or your question tool, include those as appendix. And of course your reference page.